Hello and welcome. Today I'm adding Spider Fighter from the Activision Collection 2 to my ever-growing list where I rank every Evercade game ever. Originally released in 1982 for the Atari 2600, Spider Fighter is a fixed shooter where you're guiding three bunches of fruit on the top right hand side of the screen from various insects or spiders, I assume. Although these clearly aren't normal spiders, you seem to be controlling a spaceshipy type thing or a gun turret, and these giant spider things or whatever they are swoop down, shoot back at you much like aliens from Space Invaders, Galaga and whatever else. Anyway, apparently it's a bit of a clone of an arcade game by Sunsoft and Taito called Stratovox, but I'd never played or heard of that before. And that's of course as well as having influence from things like Space Invaders, Galaxy and everything else that I've already mentioned because it was a very popular genre back then. Anyway, I don't think there's any story to speak of, and there's certainly no nostalgia. I first played this on the Evercade, so let's get on to the graphics. And like I say, for many 2600 games, the graphics are quite clean and readable. Everything looks pretty distinct and crisp, but most importantly, it moves very smoothly with minimal or perhaps almost zero flicker. And I think despite the simplicity of the graphics, I think this is one of the better looking 2600 games I've played. I like the colour palette, the overall visual style, it comes together well. It's certainly nothing spectacular, but I don't know, I just find it appealing. In a similar way that Demon Attack is quite a good looking game. And that's another game that shares some DNA with as well.
Sound.
Again, fairly basic stuff. It is a 2600 game after all, but there is a certain crisper, satisfying vibe to the sounds. They're a bit more crunchy and less shrill than many other, the sounds of many other games on the system. There's no music, it's no frills type of sound, but the sound you have does suit the action and urgency of the game.
Gameplay.
I mean, it's a fixed shooter, there's not too much to say surely. It's more defensive as you are defending the fruit clusters on the side of the screen, but the enemies come at you faster and frantically. You fire extremely rapidly, and your movement left and right is very smooth. The enemy movements can be quite unpredictable, but unlike say Demon Attack, I didn't find the movement of them overly twitchy or irritating. The other aspect I should mention is the fruit itself. The enemies will try and steal your fruit, and if you lose all your fruits, then it's game over, regardless of how many lives you have.
Overall opinion.
I've got to admit, I had a bit of a journey with this game, debating whether I liked it or not. On one hand, it's very vast, crunchy and satisfying to play, but there's a point where it starts feeling overly easy, and that's where you realise that you've barely scratched the surface and the difficulty ramps up fast. More enemies, with faster movement, firing more aggressively, and it's then that you realise that unlike games like Space Invaders and Demon Attack, which are more about precision and pattern memorisation, Spider Fighter is all out action, relying on quick reactions and aggression. The game also gives me some Jeff Minter vibes. In as much as it takes a fairly familiar concept and ramps it up, makes it a bit more chaotic, and it really put me in mind of Abductor from the Armasoft collection. But I do think this is the superior game by a reasonable margin, which is to say that yes, despite my initial uncertainty on the game, it is very much one I like. Certainly more than things like Demon Attack, Mega Mania, Space Invaders, Galaxy and Galaga. Although some of those games I've been playing for years and this is much newer to me, but yeah, I've been really enjoying it, so I should get on with the
ranking.
To place Spider Fighter on my ever-growing list where I rank every Evercade game ever, I've elected to put it above Vimana, but below River Raid. And I've got to admit, I've kept it a little bit lower than in some ways I want to put it to sort of factor in a bit of recency bias. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.